KB on the beat.
How nature is a distraction from true freedom and liberation. It's just another oasis. Just like you can go out into the desert and you can see when the desert that you are in is white supremacy, Babylon, quote nature, quote unquote Mama Earth is not necessarily going to save you. It's not necessarily. You really escaping having to deal with what brought you out there in the first place is what we really have to consider that and deal with what we're up against. How to do all that, you might as well be a warrior for your people. About this life, and you know you guys, there's something definitely special in you. Don't let nature fool you. All of this is nature. Where is nature not at for you to say that you are going out into nature? Black supremacy's Nattyisisyah. Join the website www.kingnobleuncensored.com. So in this video I'm going to be talking about how nature is a distraction from true freedom and liberation. Now, I know that sounds like an oxymoronic thing to say. However, if you consider all of the elements and the facts of what you're really up against, you can clearly see just how this is true. Take, for example, if you decide or you realize that everything in the system is wrong, it's corrupt, and you don't want to take any part of it anymore. It's wrong to be purchasing items that were made in another country by people who were enslaved or paid a very low minimum wage and who were brutally beaten and abused to do so. It's corrupt that in order for you to eat that you got to pay money and you got to buy the items of the food. And it's corrupt that you got to send your children away to somebody who's not going to teach them about their real history and really give them a good education and build up their self-esteem. So you decide that you're going to get out of the system, leave Babylon, and you're going to go out into nature somewhere. Now here's the problem. You haven't actually done anything about a system and a group of people who have developed a global economy, who have developed a global army and infrastructure that has been established for the purpose and the pursuit of destroying indigenous people all over the world wherever they see them for their capitalistic goals. So therefore, by taking your family and going back out into nature, you have just now become target and enemy number one all over again. You've become another indigenous person. You've become another savage and another, quote unquote monkey, as they would call it, out in the forest, just taking up all this land and space, occupying resources that they want to come and dig under, bulldoze over, and, enslave the people. That's just one example. Another example, you decide that you're going to go out into the forest, you're going to go out into the jungle, you're going to go out into the mountains somewhere. Now you're out there. You are out there in the elements. You are now exposed to the rain. You are now exposed to the wind. You are now exposed to any natural disasters. You are exposed to the insects. You're definitely exposed to the sun. Of course, as melanated people, we would like to argue that, that we are supposed to be out in the sun and that this is all beneficial to us. But of course, there are some points where you obviously would want to come out of the sun for a little time, and to basically just capture yourself, get yourself back together, because the sun can, for one, be draining. Don't let it fool you. There are plenty of people who have been killed by the sun, been burned by the sun by, of course, some of them were torturous reasons where, they are put up on a cross or whatever and left out in the sun to literally dehydrate and dry up. You know, if you take, for example, going out in nature, but you go into the desert, you will die if you do not get enough water. The same is with going out into nature. Nature is just another oasis. Just like you can go out into the desert and you could see pools of water if you were walking for a long time and you become thirsty. Just like you could see an oasis in the middle of the desert. The forests, the jungles, the mountains, the wild can be another oasis when the desert that you are in is white supremacy, Babylon, capitalism, and corporate America. So this is something that you would have to consider and have to see. Running out into quote unquote nature, quote unquote Mama Earth, is not necessarily going to save you. It's not necessarily going to help you, right? That is just one example. So now, let me elaborate on this example though. So now you're out in nature, exposed to all of these elements, including the sun, whether you want to hear that or not, as a melanated person, right? You're exposed to all these elements. What are you going to do? You have to protect yourself from these elements. So now you need to buy a tent. Then if you're talking about having power or electricity, you got to come up with a way to get some power or electricity, right? And that could be either through generators, that could be through other ways. You might have to develop your own technologies. And now you're developing your own technologies. What do you have that is going to protect your technologies that you develop? Because you can come up with some really interesting and some deep stuff. You know, these new technologies that you're building, how are you going to ensure that you maintain the sole ownership of this technology that you have built to provide you with possibly free and unlimited power, which we know that the government does not want you to have? Okay, so that's just one thing. Then you're talking about insects. How are you going to protect yourself from all these insects that are literally sucking your blood? A lot of these insects are genetically modified insects. Take, for example, these mosquitoes. They can bite through clothes. They never always used to bite through any type of clothing and material that you have. They can bite through almost any clothing and material that you have now. They carry germs and diseases now. So now you also got to be a herbalist. Now you also got to you got to know the plants around you. So you got to know the insects around you. You got to be able to protect and defend yourself against those. And you got to know the herbs around you. And some of those herbs and plants, you got to know how to defend and protect yourself against those, because some of those plants are poisonous. So now you swapped one enemy combatant for another. But you don't want to see it as that. You want to see it as Mama Earth. She's all caring and loving, isn't she? Right? But she doesn't mind poisoning you, and she doesn't mind stinging you. And it's not because you went astray. It's not because you're not living correct and according to Mother Earth. You went out into nature for that very purpose, but you find that your ass is still getting ate up, stung up. You still got to worry about spiders, snakes, possible animals, big cats, bears, all types of creatures. Right? You could have just wild animals like wild warthogs, depending on where you're at. You could have alligators, depending on where you're at. Because remember, you're trying to live between the Tropic of Cancer and all of that, right? And Capricorn. So this is where everything is just teeming with just a complete wildlife. Okay. So that's you're up against that. And I'm definitely not making this video to discourage anybody from living out in nature. I absolutely support living out in nature. However, you do have to consider, for one, what brought you out into nature. And if you are going into nature, are you really escaping having to deal with what brought you out there in the first place? Is what brought you out there in the first place going to leave you alone simply because you went out there into quote unquote Mother Earth, Mother Nature in the first place? And the answer for that is no. However, now you are faced with a lot of other things. And my goal in making this video is, for one, for you to see how not only can going out into nature make you stronger as an individual, and beyond that as a group of people, which it should, right? But you're ultimately going to have to face what brought you out there in the first place. And it wasn't just because you were a completely you didn't just wake up one morning and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these trees. Oh wow, I just want to lay down in the grass. Look at this. I'm just gonna roll down the mountain and roll back up. You know what I mean? Something brought you out there. And whether you have always had this inclination since you were a child or not, the fact that you were not raised in nature yourself, it tells you that somewhere down the line, somebody in your family either got tricked, robbed, as in physically taken, as in slavery, and placed in a position, that was not natural for you. So now you want to go back into nature, but only this time you are ill prepared, ill experienced, right? And you are vulnerable, probably more vulnerable than you were before whoever in your family got either tricked or stolen into becoming part of the concrete jungle. So now you want to go back into the green jungle, right? And let's go back there for a minute. So we talked about how you have to think about protecting yourself from the elements, which is the wind, the rain, the sleet, heat, possible cold, possible sun, dehydration, contamination, infestation, whether it be of water or insects and all that so forth. You gotta think about hygiene, right? And not just personal hygiene, because absolutely surely you could just go and bathe in the river, right? But you also got to think about your own excrement that is coming out of your body. How are you going to deal with that? Are you setting up? I think they're called latrines, where you're digging pits and burying your feces. Are you how are you dealing with the urine? Where is your quote unquote washroom? You got to think about that. Where's your washroom set up? You don't want to be shitting too close to the river. You don't want to be excreting waste too close to where you're eating at, or too close to your camp. That's just one thing to consider, because you might think that what you're doing is natural because the animals just defecate wherever they are and wherever they walk, but they have been out in nature for millions, maybe not millions depending on the animal, but a lot of these animals have been out in nature for years, so they've developed a type of immunity. So now you got to think about immunity. You got to become immune to nature again. Do people realize this? I don't think people realize you actually have to develop an immunity for nature, right? So, and in so many ways, right? So hygiene is another thing to consider. Another thing to consider is the nature itself. You have trees. Some of these trees will give way on you, But what I have noticed that these trees absolutely definitely do have a consciousness. They will not necessarily just fall on you, but that's something else you need to take care of, to consider. That even though these trees have a social network of their own where they absolutely communicate with each other, and they are aware that you are there and they will not necessarily fall on you, you've got to give these trees time to fall. So you cannot necessarily just set up your tent or your base in one space and not give these trees time or a chance to lay themselves to rest, because every now and then they need to fall, right? So you really gotta be one with nature, because now you gotta be like, okay, I'm going to leave this campsite and I'm going to go to another, so you beautiful trees can do your thing, right? It gets that deep, right? So that's another thing. And it's not necessarily wonderful to be hearing trees falling around you. That can be very shocking, and it's like when you hear that thump of a tree fall, that's like the split second between life and death. And you have to acknowledge that each and every time, right? But of course, like I said, these trees do definitely appear to have a very conscious awareness of you being around them, but you've also got to give them that space to do the things that trees do. Now, we're talking about food. You're out in nature, right? Where is your food coming from? Where is your food coming from? There are definitely a lot of herbs and plants that you can eat out in nature, like chickweed and nettle, and depending on where you are, some other foods and some other herbs that you can eat. You've got to be able to identify these herbs. You don't want to just eat anything, because you don't want to get poisoned. You don't want to die, even though probably between 70 to 90% of the foods outside in nature are non-poisonous, but that all depends on where you are. The closer you move to the tropics, or the Tropic of Cancer, and between that and Capricorn, there's more, probably a greater risk of coming across more poisonous foods. So you got to take that into deep consideration, because it's one thing to say that, the system is corrupt and I'm going out into nature and I'm going to go live in Babylon, and to hell with everybody that's still in Babylon. They're all corrupt. But now you find yourself having to leave the mountains and having to leave the jungle, having to leave the forest, to go to either a supermarket, grocery store, any type of market of some sort, right? To go to a local vendor, to go to somebody else and their farm. So now you're back interfacing with some form or fashion of the matrix. Now, hopefully, in interfacing with people who may gladly interface with the matrix, hopefully these people are not capitalistic themselves, and hopefully they are not agents themselves, right? Because a lot of these people can become informants and they can become snitches, right? So you've got to be concerned, and you've got to be very considerate of your safety, even in that sense, right? Because now you come back out and expose yourself again, right? Do these people want to see jungle men or jungle women, or these natural beings? Do they want to see them? Do they want them walking around in their grocery store looking like they haven't had a bath or whatever? Because people have a certain way of looking at people. If you don't look like you fit in, they want to class and stereotype you, right? They have their own prejudices, and some of them even have their own racist views on people who don't look like them, don't dress like them, and believe it or not, might not smell like them. You might come out smelling like just green, some type of greenery. That these people who have been accustomed to pollution, they are now allergic to the smell. Just like you got to develop an immunity to go out into nature, now they are allergic to smelling you, right? So you got to consider a lot of these things, right? But at the end of the day, has what drove you into nature, is it creating a better warrior to deal with the forces and the true evils that you are up against, that drove you out into nature in the first place? Because we know that for many of us, if we really just wanted to go out into nature, if it was just all about just going into nature, we wouldn't need cell phones to communicate with people to come with us. And if we use these cell phones, we wouldn't want to be engaging in any type of heated arguments or heated debates, or just any type of tension, because if nature is so wonderful and so great, you should be happy and joyful and blissful all the time. And majority of the time, if you're out in nature, you will be. However, when you find yourself not at ease, right? Even out in nature, you got to question, where is this dis-ease coming from? Where is this uneasement coming from? Why is it so hard? If this is a solution, right? Going out into nature. Why, if this is the solution, why am I finding myself still upset and angry, trying to communicate with people to tell them to come out into nature with me, because this is the solution, right? And then you got to look and you got to see what the true enemy is and what the true beast is, right? What the real oasis is, right? And that must be destroyed. That illusion must be removed. We got to step up and deal with that. Because no matter how long we stay out in nature, no matter how beautiful we make it out, because say we just decide, okay, we're going to be here. We're going to clear the land of the trees. We're gonna develop some type of way that we can communicate with the trees, that they're not gonna fall on us. And you do some spiritual stuff. You build your house. You build a beautiful community out in nature, right? You develop your technology, so now you have free power that basically runs forever. Or you build your own solar panels, you build your own water purification systems. You set up real good, and you start expanding. People start coming, possibly start having more children, and then somehow some attention can be brought to that new community, right? Either some type of politician might want to come down and chill out for a minute, right? That doesn't want to take no for an answer. Somebody's child, a daughter of a quote unquote prominent figure in the matrix, in white supremacy, runs away and tries to go down and to live amongst you, or you just expand too big with the people that you have that are down there, and ultimately draw attention to yourselves. The same people that you are running away from, the same system that is popping out these minds and these individuals who support the corruption are coming. They're the ones that want you, either because you didn't pay for the land that you're on, either because, they want to come up with some type of alphabet organization that, every now and then they scope out the jungle or the forest or the mountains, or, they're doing some type of land survey. They got them land surveyors. They'll make up shit. They'll make stuff up. You are still up against these same people. So until we come into rulership, until we decide that we are going to rule, you're going to be up against these same type of people. And where are you going to run to next? Because you have not developed any type of spaceship. And unless you are literally really out there working on how you are going to physically elevate and transcend from this dimension into a next, where your physical body is no longer going to be in the dimension where it can be seen on the planet Earth, then you're still up against something here that you have not necessarily taken into consideration, and maybe your downfall, and you don't want that to be your downfall, right? So you got to consider, you don't let nature fool you. All of this is nature. All the buildings are built on nature. The bank is built on nature. The schools are built on nature. The prisons is built on nature. So where is nature not at for you to say that you are going out into nature? Jungles are being cut down bit by bit. Animals ran up out of their spots. Indigenous people being hacked to death for their land, being shot, being killed, murdered, exterminated, genocide. And some people think that nature is just going to save them. Until these trees start falling on the right buildings, cars, people, until these insects decide they're only going to bite certain people, and until these animals decide that they are only going to, and they actually do this stuff en masse, and it becomes some type of holocaust. We can't put our trust solely in nature, because in nature's mind, nature's like, it's probably going to be here forever, whatever. We've seen this stuff a million times, because nature been here for billions of years. Nature's just like, coughing one cough for all this pollution produced. Nature don't give a fuck. King Noble made that video already. Go and check it out. Right? So you got to consider really and truly what you're up against. And see, this is where self-delusionment kicks in. Because once you realize that you went all this far, you did all this, and you still are up against the same enemy and same beast. You might be in outer nature lonely as hell. Isn't that why God created Eve for Adam? Or God created people himself, so-called God, so-called Adam, and so-called Eve? But you might be out there lonely. You might be lonely. You want people to come down, and you look in and everybody is just so absorbed in the matrix. Why won't they come out here? I told them it's so simple. Just come out here. Just get you a tent. That's all you need to do. Come out here and just be one with nature. Just become one. And nobody wants to come. Either they cannot find the means to come, and there's really no limit, so they can find the means to come, but to go to do those means, they might be doing some dramatic stuff. And people might not necessarily want to do such dramatic things, knowing that once they gotta get out into nature, they're still up against the same beast. So if you're gonna do some radical dramatic stuff, you might as well direct it at the right people, because for a lot of people to risk going out in nature can become a risk, yes, depending on what you might have to be willing to do. If you might have to risk your life and liberty to go out into nature, you might as well direct that attention at the right places that are stopping you from having your liberty right now, right? So now you out there, you becoming self-delusioned, right? Because you realize that it's not that easy. It's not that simple, that there's more to it. That this is just an oasis, right? And this illusion needs to be dismantled. The veil needs to come off of this illusion, right? But if you persist in disillusioning yourself, you can make up a lot of theories and a lot of things, right? Because now you can fool yourself into thinking that, you know what, what you're protecting, you can misappropriate how you are being a warrior, or how you are defending yourself, or how you are protecting yourself, and you can misappropriate this, right? So instead of defending yourselves from the real enemy and protecting yourselves from the real enemy, now you might be protecting yourselves, right, from the people that have come down there to visit. Or you're protecting yourself not to visit or to live, or whatever the case may be. Or you're protecting yourselves from, some trolls online. Like, do you see how this can become just a self-delusion, self-fulfilled prophecy, right? To the point where now your beautiful oasis or Mother Nature is not so peaceful and humble anymore, because this energy is still around you. This uneasement, you're still not at ease, because you realize what you're up against. So that can be something that you still have to face, right? Otherwise, we can come up with a lot of theories that is really just disillusioning ourselves. So we really have to consider that and deal with what we're up against, because these illusions of grandeur is just another sunken pit, another sunken place, right? Just that it's green and brown. That's the only difference. And a lot of insects and a lot of this and that running around. Illusion too, by the people who come down, right, to be amongst you, because who doesn't want an extended stay, an extended vacation stay? Who doesn't want that, right? But are those same people who want an extended stay, vacation in nature, are those same people ready and willing to stand up against the atrocities rampaging and pillaging this earth, right? Highly unlikely, so that alone should tell you where the real battle is at, and where the real freedom and liberation, what is really blocking the true freedom and liberation. Because if these same people who all want to come down to just, bathe in a waterfall all day, and to just, bask in the sun all day, and just, lay up, under a palm tree all day, and if these same people are not drawn and attracted to being out there for the purpose of really dealing with the atrocities and the true, dangers that is running upon this planet, if they don't want to do that, then they're not real. That's an illusion. Those people are not serious, right? But how many people really want to stand up against this damn devil? How many people want to do that? How many people really want to be on the front lines of something that's really going to bring about true liberation, freedom, and peace for everybody? For all our people. Who wants to do that? Nobody. That's why people can talk against the Black Power movement right now, right? People who was in the Black Power movement, deep, heavy, getting all their support, their momentum driven off of the Black Power movement, built upon the Black Power movement, right? But these same people now, they get big and they can turn their back on, oh, you don't need to do that. That's just going to get you killed. Don't do that. Just spend this money. Come to this lecture. Matter of fact, we're going to go out in nature. We don't fuck Black Power. We don't need that. Right? So it's all an illusion, because now you out in nature, you gotta develop all these technologies, warding off all these insects, setting up things to detract animals from coming at you. You gotta be be healers. You got to have the time to study these things undisturbed. You got to develop the immunity. You got to be out there for 3 or 4 years to get immune to the insect bites so that they don't smell your blood no more. You got to eat the food, the local food, to develop these blood, to develop the antibodies in your blood or whatever it is that's gonna make you immune to these animals, or these animals or insects not by if you're gonna do all that, if you got to do all that, you might as well be a warrior for your people. If you got to go and do all this training in the forest. You got to do all of this stuff. You got to do 3, 4, 5 years of self-development just so you can sun gaze, just so you can bathe in a river. Like, really? That's what this is all about. That is an illusion of grandeur. That is a gross illusion. And you still are up against the same people that drove you out there in the first place. So don't let nature fool you. Don't let going out in nature disillusion you. Don't fool yourself by thinking that just because you needed an extended vacation from white supremacy, that your extended vacation is not going to have to come to an end, and that you are not going to have to deal with this beast, because they want you to clock back in for work once your 2 weeks is up. Okay? So this is Nattyisisyah. Join the website www.kingnobleuncensored.com. Donate. Support true black liberation, true black radicals. Black radical, look that word up, and you'll see how you can really get out into nature. And I mean, we really should be able to do this. We should be able to develop our own societies, cities, communities out in nature, right? Because it can be done. We can really set up a world that is harmonious with nature, and I think ultimately that's what most of us want to do. So this video is not an attack on anybody who is out in nature, or anybody who is considering it, because there are definitely people here amongst us that is doing the same thing, right? But we know what we're up against, right? And taking a vacation from one spot in nature to the next is not necessarily going to bring about the true freedom and liberation that we as a people need. So I really want people to consider that, because if you are the type that can be about this life, then you got, there's something definitely special in you, right? And you need to awaken that up. But you really need to look and see that all our people were out in nature. We were living harmonious with nature, but that didn't stop us from getting raped, robbed, stolen, kidnapped, shipped overseas to become slaves, to become part of a system that is corrupt and doesn't want us to really go back out in nature and live freely, without the tax man coming out in the damn forest. You think he's afraid to come? He'll come out into that forest and drop that mail in the freaking slot in the tree and be like, you owe this. So there's really no escape from this, and the more you think you're trying to escape, is just the more time that they have to develop their techniques of who they're going to come after, and it's like they just got to be dealt with, because you need time to do all this spiritual meditation and to build up your aura field. You need time to do all that. You really need time undisturbed, where nobody from the matrix is going to come and just destroy all your everything that you're building up, all yourself, all your energies around you. You need time. And if you really want that true energy and that true aura and all of that really built up, you got to be able to build it up right there in the struggle of it all. Because once you build that energy up and that aura up, then you are really a force to be reckoned with. So again, join the website www.kingnobleuncensored.com.